Welcome to Intergenerational Conversations, where hosts Kiona Owens and Josephine Robinson bridge the generational gap in the nonprofit world. Each episode dives deep into topics that bring diverse ages togetherness, sparking innovation, understanding, and collaboration. Through engaging interviews and dynamic discussions, Intergenerational Conversation explores how different generations contribute their unique perspectives to shape stronger, more inclusive nonprofit communities. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey, join us as we uncover the power of conversations, shared experiences, and collective wisdom across the age. Evening. Welcome to Intergenerational Conversations. Today we're talking about the power of building multi-generational teams. Josephine, why do you think this topic is so important in today's nonprofit and business world?
I think it's so important because we service multi-generational. And I think it's important that we have people that are a part of our teams that look at things from different perspectives. Because I know those of us that are older look things differently and younger. And I think when you have a mix, there's an appreciation so you can better serve the community when you do that.
I love that. So today we have a special guest. We love that we are shared this space with Tameka Patterson, one of our Touchgate Foundation's former board member, as well as a community specialist. So Tameka, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with multi-generational teams?
Sure. So I'm a social worker, and I'm a licensed social worker. I've been that for over, I want to say 15 years.
Wow.
So I'm in the space of now in leadership. Previously, I worked, direct service, did some therapeutic counseling and things of that nature. So throughout my journey, I've been able to obtain a great deal of skill set. More so leaning into that program development piece, where I've been able to build a program from the ground up, from the grassroots, with my former employer, UIC Center for Literacy, our social services program. But I had the support of the team, but it was just like my baby to develop that. And with that, being able to focus on like 4 different type of programs under one umbrella. And with that, you're creating a team, right? So when you're creating your team, you have so many different personalities, and the diversity of your team is so important. And just looking at that from that perspective, we've had just everybody on the team had their own level of expertise. And I think in that way, that's the way to kind of approach that space with your diverse teams. With the age, with knowledge, with training, with education, the diversity in that, but also allowing your team to come forward with that expertise that they have and supporting them in that way. So in my experience, that have been very beneficial because those on my team they've gone on to do some great things. And we had a phenomenal team. I always said to our leadership board, you would not know my flaws if it wasn't for my team's level of expertise. So.
And first of all, kudos to, you mentioned your former employer, UIC, Center for Literacy. Thank you so much. But because of you guys help us, Touchgate Foundation, develop our literacy program. So you guys were instrumental in just the foundation, providing us with exceptional amount of resources. So we love and appreciate you guys for just helping us develop that program.
That's where we met.
And you said what was key is I think I'm a social worker by training. I'm retired but not retired, and I think what social workers bring is that they bring a wide net to what the kind of services.
Yes.
And so it was good that you, if I may ask, was your training specifically towards clinical or administration or a mix?
It was more so for me, it was school, actually. I went for school social work.
Okay.
but it turned out to be community social work.
Okay.
I did a little clinical social
Okay,
work.
okay.
But with social work is so vast.
Yes.
And you may go for one thing, but you realize it connects in so many different ways.
Exactly.
So just to be able to stand in spaces and be of support, I think that was just one of my biggest blessings so far, because even in my role today.
Okay.
Amazing.
Good.
Well,
Good.
I'm just glad that Tameka is sharing this space with us. Today we're going to dive into the challenges, opportunities, and practical strategies for making multi-generational collaborations a success. So we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about the challenges. So Tameka, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about working in the multi-generational teams?
I think some of the biggest misconceptions could be that we put our employees in boxes. And so when we do that, we do not really take into consideration their skill set, their expertise, and what they can bring to the table. So I think sometimes when you placing your employees in boxes, you're really coming from a space of you're carrying out these stereotypes about what you think versus what you know. And I think that creates a bigger issue within your space because you're not looking at who they are and what they bring, and they don't have that level of autonomy to be able to come forward in who they are and even feeling comfortable to speak to what they don't know.
Could you give me a small example of how you found that you needed to help people and those people that were a part of your organization not put people in boxes?
Sure. So for me, this is more of on a personal level for myself, for my own experiences. I'll say just working in different spaces, I've realized looking at what I didn't receive as an employee and the support I didn't receive at certain times, the training, the safe spaces, having the open door policy with our with leadership, it puts people in a box. So I always said, before I used to complain a lot, and you talk to your coworkers, and you're like, "Oh, did you hear? Did you see? Or do you know?" And but then one day, I'll never forget, I was talking to one of my coworkers, and I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna change my perspective right now, my approach to this." I said, "Now I'm gonna start looking at what I won't do." And then when I become a manager or when I become in leadership, these are the things that I won't do, and pick out the things that I will do.
Exactly.
Because unfortunately, becoming into, taking on the leadership role, not every organization have training in place to train leadership to even manage a team. So, I've carried that with me. And when I had opportunity to coach, lead, support, I was intentional about providing that type of support too.
That's excellent. Yeah. That's really important, because I think that happens a lot, is that when you do get in the seat, you can also reflect how it was when you weren't in the seat and when you got the power. And then if you're fortunate enough to have a higher administration team that allows you to make that happen, it makes it and ultimately the clients and the community that you partner with and serve with are better off.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely true. And even also, one thing I want to point out is being open to constructive criticism.
Yes.
Being open to the feedback, that your staff members may have for you, because you may not be doing enough. You may not even know that you're not doing enough. Being open to saying, you know what, I'm not sure about this. Let me go find out and see and come back to you.
Excellent.
Being okay to, feeling okay and confident enough to say, I don't know.
Good.
But I'm willing to find out. Or even being able to say, oh, my apologies.
Exactly.
I steered you, wrong, or I thought this, but, but being able to come forward and say, okay, that's on me, that's my bad. Let's correct this.
Excellent.
And let's navigate forward.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that has been our theme across all of our episodes is communication. So some teams struggle with generational gaps when it comes to communication. What are some common barriers, and how do you recommend overcoming them?
Oh, that's so huge. When we talk about those communication gaps, I think, in essence, we have to think about the demand of email, the demand of like, how do we filter out information and ensure that the whole team receives it and understands it. Times when you have like these major meetings at work and it's like all staff and all this information is coming, I think it's important to debrief after those meetings so you can speak with your team and say, hey, what was your takeaway? So they can say, well, I don't have one. Can you explain it? Or like, what did they mean by that? So I think, we talk about the communication gap, thinking about really looking at your team and how do they best receive and comprehend. So that comes with assessment, right? Like in leadership, you have to take the time to observe those that you're working with. It's not a one-way fit all, and it's being able to really tap into, and explain your process. I think that's important. So I think like barriers can be along with, assumption from leadership, assumption that staff do know what you're saying and what you're meaning, assumption that your staff is going to communicate with each other. Like, say, for instance, you having a staff meeting and one didn't show, and you're thinking one of the other team members will fill them in, right? Yeah. Not taking meeting minutes, so you have, I think there's a great deal of barriers from that perspective that's coming to mind. But I think best ways to overcome that, I'll say staff meetings, take the meeting minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. Make sure all staff have access to that. Staff who aren't there, let's meet so I can fill you in on what you missed. Let's go over these minutes. Or, hey, we're going to meet at this time, but I want you to take time to read the minutes so we can discuss that if you have any questions. I think that sometimes we know that we have certain employees who don't read their emails right away. And it's like, hey, for me, it's let's set an expectation up front.
Yes.
When we have our staff meetings, like being new, I'm in a newer position of leadership. And just having them understand who I am and understanding who they are. But I'm like setting the expectations, but with a gentle touch, though.
I think one of the things is that emails and with multi-generational, it's amazing that people, and emails are wonderful. Now I hear they have chats. And
I was going to turn into that, yes.
And I think it's important as you build multi-generational teams to really, and you talked about training and professional development to help people know what the culture of that agency is. Because, sometimes people come from very traditional agencies where people actually pick up the phone and call. But a lot of times I find as I advance in my career is that if you didn't read your email, it was things were happening that you might not be aware of. And really to have that, and I think as you build because sometimes people, even younger people and older people, learn differently and they communicate differently, and to make sure, and I appreciate you saying that, kind of let people know what your expectations are. Because people say, well, I sent you an email, and it's like, okay, but based on where you're at, and some organizations, and based on what level you're at, you can get 100 emails a day. And so if you don't know which one is important or whatever, you kind of, and you're like, oh, I missed that, or I missed that meeting, or I didn't respond to that chat. And I was like, they do chats now. And I think it's really important. And I think you talked about the training as you build multi-generational teams to because sometimes, and I use, the older I get, use lack of knowledge and ignorance of things is not a bad word, but you don't even know that you don't know.
Oh, man.
And a lot of times people don't know that they don't know. So how do you work on, when you work with multi-generational teams, how do you kind of do that, as Kiona said, the communication? How do you make sure that is clear?
So with that, it is a very good question. With that brings to mind that speaking to what are the forms of communication first, right? So like the chat. I totally forgot about to mention that because that's something that we do use a lot. We use chat, Microsoft Teams, right? For example.
Google has
Yes, Google Chats. But in my current role, it's like we use Microsoft Teams, we have cell phones, and we have email. So with the cell phones, there's texting as well.
Yes.
So it's just like the texting aspect, and not everybody is comfortable with that. So my thing is, we can't use the texting lingo, you know, like breaking it down. Like we still have to write our text like we are emailing because not everybody understands that, you know.
Exactly.
It's you know, and then also like with the chat, just a quick chat, throw it in there. And another thing that I've done though currently with Microsoft Teams, you could create groups, and that's another like email component, group component where it could be specific to that group. So if you're managing different teams, like creating that group, that has been so effective for us. But walking my staff through
Exactly.
how do you access it? How do you utilize Teams? What does that look like? And also being open and patient
Exactly.
for those who are not really grasping what that is and how to do it, or if they're lacking, right? Even technology on the cell phone, like the cell phone, we use it for GPS when you're out in the field. It's so many different components where you can also pull up Teams from your cell phone. If you're in community, you have a meeting, right? So just really being intentional about how to walk them through and about how to access it from all components. Because you can't assume that everyone knows. It took me a minute to really open myself up to using Teams. We were using Google, you know, in my previous job, and it was like, we're going to switch over to Microsoft Teams, and I'm like, inside, I'm like, no. I don't want to. I've already created my system. This works for me. And so when I went to my new role, they were using Microsoft Teams. And I was like, well, Tameka, you have to open yourself up. So if I know that it created some type of anxiety to me, I have to be open and patient with those that may have anxiety with learning something new as well. So
you mentioned two communication platforms. Another communication platform that often is used in the nonprofit community is Slack. So Slack is another channel where they have that same space for communication. It's all about like how do you spend time to get the person or your peer up to that level of accessibility, skills, because that's one of the things that's lacking is navigating through the platforms and seeing all the tools like, oh, it's a chat, I could create a group, like just learning the ins and outs and spending the time to make sure that they can comprehend like, okay, and then that lingo.
Yes.
Like texting when you're sending emails and
oh my goodness.
just keeping that common thread of professional communication. You know?
And using the same lingo when you're speaking, right, to your staff, and not switching it up and being like, wait a minute, did I say I sent the chat or did I? Like, you know, being conscious about what you're speaking to, because sometimes you get so caught up in doing so many different things and communicating in different ways yourself. Like my level of responsibility with my peers and other leadership, you know, but ensuring, like, I'm very big on ensuring that my team have the tools that they need to be successful in their role. And when we say successful, according to what's successful to them and the success of the program itself, too. So,
that's key right there. That is so key. And actually, it's a great segue to my next question is how can leaders and managers ensure that every voice, regardless of age, is heard and valued in making the decisions?
So I'm big on bringing my team together, and I'll give an example.
Okay.
In my new role, we're developing processes, policies, procedures, and things of that nature. So our most recent project will be creating a process for onboarding new staff.
Okay, real important.
So, so what that looks like, we want to make it uniform, so on and so forth. But in that approach, I asked everyone on the team, if you had this experience, I want you to share with the team, how did you approach it? What did you utilize? And what do you think was lacking?
Excellent.
Yeah.
I wanted everybody to bring that tool with them. And I created a folder in our teams that I walked everybody through.
Excellent.
Like, upload. Do you need support in uploading your documents?
That's real.
Upload your documents into your folder for your region, and any support you needed, I will help you with that. So now I said, because when we come together, I'm going to print out everything.
Excellent.
I want us to look at everything, and then we're going to collectively create this process.
Excellent. I
So,
think because one of the things is that many of us baby boomers and maybe even some Generation X people still like to touch paper.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Amen. Okay. And I think it's really important because a lot of times people get overwhelmed, and when you're onboarding people, people don't know what all it takes to do their job.
Yeah.
And what you said is that, and it also, you seem like you give people an opportunity to say, when you were onboarded, because I worked for a large humanitarian organization, and my boss was actually in Texas, and I was here in Chicago, and to realize so many things were on the computer that I had to read and take tests in order to make sure that I passed the test in order to actually be. And I think all of that, and to prepare people when they come out of organizations that don't have it, because nonprofits are really, many of them, the larger ones, are really acting more corporate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Everything digital.
and it's like, I have to, how many of these things do I have to go through, and how many tests do I have to take in order to make sure? And there are certain things I couldn't get my credit card until I passed a certain test and did certain things. So those, and to have those, and I had a wonderful boss that kind of let me know, and we had a face-to-face before I got bombarded. And I think that would be, as you building multi-generational teams, because people that are older bring additional kinds of skills, but that the whole technology, which is gonna be here, that they don't be overwhelmed and they say, well, forget it, and I won't even be bothered.
And it's interesting that you say that, because even with my team, we have our Gen Z and our millennials who like, well, I really don't like to use a lot of paper.
Exactly.
And can we just make this more digital, so on and so forth? I said, I don't have a problem with that. That's why each region, you're going to create your own teams for you and your caseworkers, right? However, I said, I do believe that when you onboard someone, they should have a binder.
Yes.
And they should have because that's your reference.
Yes.
I was like, so we're going to create that, and the rest of it, you can keep it in your teams, and you make folders so they can access that.
Excellent.
And then you have me as Gen X. I am a paper person, and I'm so trying to work on this. And I understand. I've dealt with Live Binder, where you can create these digital binders as well. But I did do an assessment with some of the caseworkers. Like, what are your thoughts about having a binder? What are your thoughts about having something more tangible? And they were like, yes, please.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, as a team collectively, we could do both.
Exactly.
It's an and. It's not a either or.
Exactly.
I'm like, but we're going to have the information still digital, because we have to print it out anyway.
Exactly.
So, and in that space, I will work with each person. Like, one person's skill set may be like, okay, I'm comfortable with writing this up. Okay, well, you can do that. And someone is comfortable with, let me help you organize this and create that plan. Hey, let's do, that's how I work with my team. I pull from people's expertise and comfortability and your areas that you're challenged in. Let's work on that during supervision time, right?
Exactly. Excellent.
We're running out of time, but
wow.
I know time always escapes when we're having a great conversation.
Yes.
Tameka, what are 3 immediate action leaders can take today to strengthen their multi-generational teams? Because you guys are like providing a wealth of information, some nuggets, especially about that digitized versus paper. I think that I'm a combination of both. I prefer electronic because it's easier to update, the live, having it live, But what is 3 immediate actions leaders can take to strengthen their multi-generational team?
I'll say, for one, be open. I'll say, be in space with your team. It's important to have team meetings and supervision. So being in that space with them, so being open, creating space for them, and being honest with your team about expectations, about what's needed, and being communication is key. Like filtering it down from all capacities and creating space for them to access that as well. So that was more than 3. But.
That's good. That's good.
That's really some great information because oftentimes, like you said, communication is key. Sometimes we, based on the language, we don't in turn speak or interpret the same thing. So communication is key. Like it's what transforms.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
It does. And with the communication, I wanted to add on. And in the end, like sometimes at the end of my meeting supervision, I asked them, "How was that for you? Do you have any questions?"
Excellent.
Or I talk to I want to hear their feedback. Just like I always, and I let them know I'm gonna ask you about how did this work for you? What did you get from this? Because it's important. And then I know that where you stand in that, and you know where I stand.
Excellent.
My huge thing is, you have any questions, concerns, or issues? Let's address this now. So we're running out of time. We literally have 1 minute to go. I really want Miss Josephine to talk about her upcoming event, and then I'll close us out.
Yes, we have a wonderful event, Cradle to Success Coalition, our annual Community Engagement Day. We have wonderful, our theme is from striving to thriving, and building and nurturing positive relationships and communities. So we've got wonderful guest speakers. We've got Dr. Guide is out of Texas, Pastor Brewer, who is a violence prevention consultant. Then we have Asia Butler, who's a CEO of Rage, and David Cherry, who's the founder of All Stars Project and Leaders Network, and Africa Porter, who's a noted community activist, and Lena O'Day, who's over the legal defense aid. So it's an opportunity for people to network. So you can contact us via email, and we can send you information out. jhrrobinson827@gmail.com. And we're excited. It's March 21st, so we wanted to let you know because we won't be back on until after it happens. So thank you so much, and thank you to our guests. You really brought some good information to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kiona.
Yes, thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you for allowing us in your space. This important conversation in our workspaces and communities can continue online. Don't forget to tune in next month, March 24th, same time, same space. We're going to dive into leadership transitions and succession plans. Thank you again for having us here. Thank you, Tameka, for being in this space. And to my co-host, my dynamic community mother, I love you. I appreciate you for joining us and being continuously a co-host. So thank you, guys.
Thank you
for inviting me.
All right.
Yes. Welcome to Intergenerational Conversations, where hosts Kiona Owens and Josephine Robinson bridge the generational gap in the nonprofit world. Each episode dives deep into topics that bring diverse ages togetherness, sparking innovation, understanding, and collaboration. Through engaging interviews and dynamic discussions, Intergenerational Conversation explores how different generations contribute their unique perspectives to shape stronger, more inclusive nonprofit communities. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting your journey, join us as we uncover the power of conversations, shared experiences, and collective wisdom across the